all the good shit go out the window. It's like you gonna run to the internet. How a bitch run to the quick and forever get they self cut off, nigga. I don't give a You forgetting who you talking to. I don't give no
NBA Youngboy just kicked his mom out, and how she lives now is sad. This woman once had everything her son's money could provide: houses, cars, a life that most people from Baton Rouge could not imagine. And now, Youngboy has cut her off. Personally, financially, publicly, he went on record saying he would love her from a distance. And that distance is looking more permanent by the day. Because there is a reason this keeps happening. A pattern. And once you see it, everything about this situation starts to make a different kind of sense. Stay with us. This one is deeper than you think. Yo, what's good, fam? Today we are breaking down why NBA Youngboy cut his mom off, what that means for her life now, and how things even got this far. Let's get into it. To understand where things stand today between NBA Youngboy, whose real name is Kentrell Gaulden, and his mother Shahonda Gaulden, you have to go back to the beginning. Not to a studio session or a courtroom, but to a childhood in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where Kentrell grew up largely without his father, who was incarcerated for much of his early life. That absence created a void, and into that void stepped his grandmother, who became one of the most significant people in his entire life. His grandmother was the consistency. She was the stability. She was the person who showed up when showing up was not guaranteed. She was the one who kept a roof over his sense of self when everything else around him was uncertain. And that bond did not fade as he became famous. If anything, it deepened. It became the measuring stick against which Youngboy measured loyalty, love, and what it truly meant for someone to be in your corner. When he talks about family, when he talks about the people who matter to him, his grandmother is always at the center of that conversation. Understanding that is essential to understanding everything else that follows. Shahonda Gaulden, his mother, has been a more complicated presence in the public story. Over the years, the public has seen multiple versions of this mother and son relationship. There have been moments where they appeared close, moments where she showed up at events, moments where she was woven into his public world. There was a time when being Youngboy's mother came with a certain visibility, when her connection to him was something people associated with family loyalty and pride. But there have also been periods of clear tension, moments where things boiled over, moments where very serious allegations began to surface. And crucially, there have been multiple moments where what should have stayed private became very, very public, where this family's business was aired for millions to consume and debate. Each time that happened, it left a mark, and those marks accumulated over years until the relationship reached the breaking point we are watching right now. Neither side of this story is without complexity. Shahonda has made clear that she believes her son has misrepresented their history and that she deserves to be heard. Youngboy has made clear that he has reached a point where he no longer believes the relationship is something he can sustain. Both of them are convinced the other is not being fully honest with the world, and that mutual conviction is exactly what has made this feud so painful and so impossible to resolve. The moment this conflict entered a new and final-looking phase began with an interview. Youngboy sat down with Funny Marco for a conversation that was wide-ranging, calm at moments, and deeply revealing at others. When the topic of his mother came up, Youngboy was not screaming. He was not in attack mode. He spoke in a measured way that, if anything, made his words hit harder than any angry outburst could have. He said he had reached a point where he would love her from a distance. 4 words: love her from a distance. And fam, those 4 words carried more weight than most people expected because they were not hateful. They were final. There is a difference between someone saying they despise their parent and someone saying they choose to love their parent from far away. The first is rage. The second is resignation. And resignation, when it comes from someone as emotionally raw and expressive as Youngboy, carries a weight that most people immediately felt. He was not announcing war. He was announcing a decision. He had processed something, and on the other side of that processing, he had concluded that maintaining a close relationship with his mother was no longer healthy for him. He explained that the relationship with his mother was one of the major sources of the anger and rage that had lived inside him for years. Now, it is important to say clearly that this is Youngboy's own account of his own emotional experience. This is not a clinical assessment. This is not a proven psychological finding. But it is significant because it shows how deeply personal and long-standing this wound is. He was not saying his mother caused him to do anything. He was saying that when he looks inward at the places where his pain came from, she is part of that picture. Shirhanda was not going to sit quietly. When she heard what was being said in that interview, she pushed back publicly. She questioned the version of events her son was presenting. She raised questions about his relationship with his own children, suggesting publicly that he does not stay in contact with them the way a present father should. She challenged him about who was actually taking family business to the public, essentially accusing him of doing the very thing he claimed she does. "Do not come for me publicly" was the core of her message, even while she was in fact doing exactly that in response to him. That irony was not lost on Youngboy either. There was also a specific and somewhat strange detail that surfaced during this period. Shirhanda made a comment about watching Youngboy's interview from the kitchen, and later she appeared to acknowledge that she had confused that interview with a separate piece of content filmed in Utah. Now, this might seem like a small and easily forgettable moment, but it is worth examining, because in the middle of a viral family dispute, small details like that do not stay small. They get clipped, they get reposted, they get turned into debate topics overnight. They add noise to an already chaotic situation. And that is part of what makes these public family conflicts so hard to navigate. Every statement, every correction, every moment of confusion becomes a permanent record that gets interpreted, misinterpreted, and used by people who have never met either party and never will. Youngboy went on live and his tone had shifted completely. What had been calm and resigned in the Funny Marco interview was gone. In its place was something raw, direct, and final. And the reason his energy had shifted that hard was simple. His mother had brought his children into it. She had gone public questioning whether he even speaks to his own kids. And that, according to Youngboy, was the line that broke everything open. He laid it all out. According to him, his mother is spoiled. That was his word, spoiled. He says she has received everything from him. Houses, luxury cars, endless financial support, whatever she needed. And as long as he kept giving, things stayed manageable. But the moment he said no, the moment he drew a boundary and refused to keep handing over what she wanted, the relationship flipped. She did not handle it privately. She did not pick up the phone and talk it out. According to Youngboy, she went straight to the internet, playing the victim, spinning her version of events, and attacking his name in front of millions of people. That is the cycle he described. Give her what she wants and everything is fine. Tell her no, and she runs to the public. And fam, that cycle is what finally pushed him over the edge, because it had happened too many times. It was not a one-off argument. It was a pattern. Every time he set a limit, the same thing followed. And now that she had dragged his children into it publicly, he was done entertaining it. He made it clear on that live, he is cutting her off. Financially, personally, for good. No more houses, no more cars, no more support, and no more second chances. The door, in his words, is closed. Here is why that matters so much in this specific situation. Most people can have a family argument and keep it contained. They argue, they cool off, they eventually find their way back to each other. Youngboy does not have that option. The moment something goes public involving him, it becomes bigger than both of them. Sides get chosen, narratives form, and every new statement either party makes just adds more fuel to something that was already burning. He cannot manage a public fire and try to fix a private relationship at the same time. And according to him, his mother understands exactly how that works, which is what makes it so effective and exactly why he says he is done for good. Now let us talk about the housing and financial history, because it has come up repeatedly and deserves a careful look. Youngboy has previously made public statements about purchasing a house for his mother. He has described situations where financial support and housing arrangements became sources of conflict rather than gratitude. Shirhanda, for her part, has at various points made her own position very clear. She said at one point that she would rather sleep on a park bench than let her son's money control her. That is her stated position, not an established fact about the underlying dispute. But it tells you something important about how she sees the dynamic. She does not appear to view his financial support as unconditional. She appears to view it as an instrument of control. And that fundamental disagreement about what the money means is probably more important than any specific property or any specific dollar amount. Because what the house represents, underneath all the drama, is a power shift that most families are not prepared for. Youngboy became extraordinarily wealthy while still very young. The normal parent-child hierarchy flipped. The child became the one writing the checks, buying the properties, controlling access to a lifestyle the parent could not provide for herself. And for a parent who spent years being the authority figure, that shift can be deeply uncomfortable, even when the child is being generous. The parent can start to feel like the money comes with strings. The child can start to feel like the generosity is being taken for granted rather than appreciated. Neither feeling is necessarily wrong, but the two of them living inside that tension at the same time without ever fully addressing it is a recipe for exactly the kind of resentment that has been building in this family for years. Youngboy got rich fast, and when you get rich that fast, the relationships around you change whether you want them to or not. Some people rise with you, some people start to treat what you give as what you owe. And according to him, his mother ended up in the second category. And then there is the grandmother. Youngboy has publicly alleged that there was a specific incident involving Shahanda behaving disrespectfully toward both him and his grandmother, including the very serious allegation that she spit in their faces. It is essential to state clearly that this is an allegation Youngboy has made publicly. It has not been independently proven. It is not an established fact. But even as an allegation, it adds a critical dimension to this story because it means the conflict is not simply between a mother and a son. It involves the woman Youngboy credits as one of the most important people who ever showed up for him. His grandmother was his foundation when nothing else was stable. And if his allegations about her treatment are true, then his mother did not just disappoint him. She violated something he considered sacred. That is a different kind of wound. That is the kind of thing that does not heal easily if it heals at all. Youngboy's public comments suggest his definition of family is built more on loyalty and presence than on blood. His grandmother earned her place. And if what he says happened is true, his mother destroyed hers. The children added another layer of pain to an already painful situation. When Shahanda publicly questioned whether Youngboy even speaks to his kids, she was not just challenging him as a son, she was challenging him as a father. And that is a specific kind of accusation that reaches somewhere different than most other attacks can. Fatherhood is personal in a way that financial disputes and public arguments simply are not. It goes to the core of who someone is and what they value. Youngboy pushed back hard. He believed she had crossed into territory she had no business entering in a public forum, and that using his children as ammunition in an adult argument was a line that could not be walked back. He was right to identify it as an escalation, because that is exactly what it was. Once children are introduced into an adult conflict, the emotional stakes multiply in ways that make resolution significantly harder. Every subsequent statement now carries the weight of how it might affect public perception of someone as a parent. And that is a burden that does not lift quickly. Is this permanent? Youngboy has spoken as though it is. He has not offered a list of conditions that would lead to reconciliation. He has not said if she changes this or that, things can be repaired. He has said he loves her from a distance, and that distance sounds less like a temporary cooling off and more like a final position. But it is worth noting that family relationships are long and complicated, and statements made during periods of intense conflict do not always predict the future perfectly. People have come back from worse. What is different here is that every word said publicly now exists permanently. There is no taking it back, no hoping people forget, no version of this where the record gets quietly erased. That is a specific and modern kind of damage that earlier generations of family conflict simply did not have to reckon with. And it means that even if this relationship ever found a way to heal, the words that were said in public will always be there, archived, clipped, and accessible to anyone who goes looking. And that brings us back to where the title of this video started, How She Lives Now, and why people call it sad. The reality of Shahanda's current situation is not something the public has full documented access to. What is clear is that she has lost the financial support and the personal closeness that once connected her to one of the most successful careers in modern hip-hop. Whatever the specifics of any housing arrangement, whatever the details of what was provided and what has now been withdrawn, the larger picture is that the life she had as NBA Youngboy's mother looks very different from the life she appears to be navigating now. But the sadness is not really about material things. It is about what those material things represented. For years, being NBA Youngboy's mother came with a certain life attached to it. Access to resources, connection to his world, a status that extended beyond her own circumstances. There was a version of her life that was defined by proximity to his success, and that version is gone. She is not simply living with less money. She is living with less of everything that his presence brought with it. The connections, the access, the sense that her son's world was also, in some way, her world. Think about what that shift actually looks like in practice. When your son is one of the most streamed artists alive, his name opens doors. His circle is a circle that extends to you. The people around him know who you are. The resources available to him can flow in your direction. And then one day, because of an argument, because of a pattern that repeated one too many times, because of words said publicly that cannot be taken back, all of that stops. The doors close, the circle tightens, and you are on the outside of it. The resources dry up, and you are left defending yourself to an audience of strangers, while the person who once provided everything you had moves forward without looking back. That is not just a financial loss. That is an identity loss. And that is what makes her situation genuinely sad to the people watching. Not the absence of luxury, but the absence of her son. Youngboy has been living in South Korea. He has spoken about it as a place where he feels safe and at peace, far removed from the environment and many of the situations that defined his earlier years in America. And when you hear him describe it, you get the sense that the distance is not just geographical. It is intentional. It is deliberate. He is building a life where he controls who is in it and who is not. He is choosing his surroundings carefully in a way that was never available to him when he was younger. And the streets and circumstances controlled those choices for him. South Korea is not just a location. It is a statement about the kind of life he's trying to create. And part of creating that life means deciding, sometimes painfully, that certain people, regardless of how they are related to you, do not belong in your immediate world. His mother, based on everything he has said publicly, is one of those people. Is this permanent? Youngboy has spoken as though it is. He has not offered a list of conditions that would lead to reconciliation. He has not said if she changes this or that, things can be repaired. He has said he loves her from a distance, and the distance sounds like it is not a temporary measure. But it is worth noting that family relationships are long and complicated, and statements made during periods of intense conflict do not always predict the future perfectly. People have come back from worse. However, every word that has been said publicly now exists permanently. That is a specific and modern kind of damage that earlier generations of family conflict simply did not have to reckon with. Here is the full arc. Youngboy grew up in Baton Rouge without his father, raised in large part by his grandmother, who became the emotional foundation of his life. He came up in difficult circumstances, made music that connected with millions of people on a deeply personal level, and became one of the most commercially successful independent artists in modern hip-hop history. As his money grew, so did his family's reliance on it. And with it, the complications that arrive when financial power and emotional relationships become impossible to separate. He started providing for his mother. He gave generously for years without pulling back. But according to him, every time he tried to set a limit, the harmony broke and the conflict went public. He sat down with Funny Marco and spoke calmly about loving her from a distance. She pushed back and brought his children into it. He responded directly, laid out the full cycle as he sees it, and announced he was done. No more financial support, no more access, no more second chances. And now the relationship is at its most severed point ever, with both of them standing behind their own version of the truth and an audience of millions that will never have access to the full picture behind closed doors. The deeper theme here is one that families across all income levels struggle with, but that becomes magnified when enormous wealth is involved. What happens when the child becomes the provider? What happens when the power dynamics inside a family flip because one person got famous and rich and very young? What happens when financial support gets mixed up with emotional expectations and neither side can separate the money from the feelings? There are no clean answers to any of those questions, but this story shows exactly what happens when they go unresolved long enough. Youngboy's decision is not about revenge. His statement about loving her from a distance is not the statement of a man who wants to hurt his mother. It is the statement of a man who believes that protecting his peace requires that she not be in his immediate world. Whether that is fair to her is a question viewers will answer differently based on their own values and experiences. What is harder to argue with is that he has the right to make that decision. Adults can choose the level of contact they maintain with family members. That does not make the choice easy or painless for anyone. And the saddest part of this entire story might be the simplest. NBA Youngboy spent years trying to build a life completely different from the one he grew up in. He fought for his freedom, his music, his peace, his children's future. He crossed every obstacle the streets, the courts, and the industry threw at him. And now, the hardest boundary he may ever have to maintain is not against a rival, not against the legal system, not against an industry that spent years trying to control him, but against his own mother. That is a weight no amount of success makes easier to carry. That is where the story lives. Not in the houses, not in the money, not in the public back and forth. In the quiet, devastating space between a son who says he can no longer let her in, and for Shahonda Golden, the woman who raised one of the most celebrated artists of his generation, the distance between those two things may be the hardest thing she has ever had to live with. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Is Youngboy wrong for this, or did she push him there?